Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're zooming in on just one thing, a guide called IELTS Writing, a Band 9 Masterclass. And our mission really is to unpack only what this specific Masterclass tells us. We want to pull out the core strategies, the insights it claims are needed to understand, well, what Band 9 writing actually looks like in the IELTS test. We're sticking strictly to this guide's perspective.
Absolutely. And this Masterclass, it jumps right in, laying out the basic test structure first. So, 2 tasks. Task 1, that's the shorter one. Aim for about 150 words, and it suggests around 20 minutes for it.
Okay.
Then there's Task 2. That's the bigger piece, needs at least 250 words, and you get roughly 40 minutes. The guide does make a point that Task 1 changes depending on whether you're doing the academic or the general training module.
Right, that's a key difference.
Yeah.
So the guide sets the scene with the time and word limits. But what does it actually say achieving that top Band 9 score involves? What does it look like according to the source?
Well, according to this Masterclass, getting a Band 9 isn't just about, completing the tasks. It means fully hitting every single part of the question prompt.
Every part, okay.
Yeah, and presenting a viewpoint or argument that's completely developed and backed up. And crucially, it says the writing needs to flow really smoothly, be cohesive and clear, but without sounding clunky or using the same linking words over and over again mechanically. And naturally, for Band 9, it demands a wide range of vocabulary and grammar, all used very, very accurately.
Got it. So this deep dive is essentially tracing the specific path this guide lays out, its recipe, if you will, for potentially hitting that Band 9 standard. Let's start digging into its approach, maybe starting with Task 1. Okay, so the guide breaks down Task 1 first, starting with the academic module. And this one, it says, is all about reporting on visuals, right?
Exactly. Things like line graphs, bar charts, pie charts, tables. Could also be maps comparing changes or diagrams showing a process. You're basically describing what you see objectively.
And does the guide recommend a particular way to structure this report? Because structure seems key for these high bands.
Oh, definitely. It lays out a clear, recommended structure. You start with an introduction, basically just paraphrase the question, say what visual shows.
Simple enough.
Then an overview. This is important. You highlight the main trends, the biggest changes, the most striking features, sort of the big picture summary.
Before getting into details.
Right. After the overview come the body paragraphs. That's where you group the details together, maybe compare different figures or categories, and always back up what you're saying with specific data points from the visual.
And the guide, does it offer specific, Band 9 level tips for this?
Yeah, a few key ones. A big one, according to the source, is that you absolutely don't try to mention every single number or detail.
Oh, interesting. So less is more.
In a way. It stresses grouping and summarizing. That shows you can analyze and synthesize, not just list data points. Also, absolutely no personal opinions. Stick to the facts presented.
Makes sense for a report.
And generally, use the past tense if the data is from the past, unless, the visual specifically shows future predictions.
Okay. Does it give any useful phrases?
It does provide a few examples to sound more analytical. Things like, it is evident that, or the most striking feature is, for comparisons maybe in contrast to XY experienced, that sort of language.
Right, formal and descriptive.
And to practice this, the guide apparently suggests working with a chart showing internet access percentages by income in 2020, just outlining the structure for that specific visual.
Okay, that covers academic task 1 based on the guide. What about the general training version? That's letter writing, isn't it?
Correct. The guide explains the different types you might face here. Formal letters, maybe a complaint to a company, a request for information, an inquiry, then semi-formal writing to someone like a colleague you don't know super well, or maybe your landlord.
Right, a bit more known, but still professional.
Exactly. And finally, informal letters, writing to friends or family members.
So different levels of formality. What does the guide say are the key things for Band 9 in these letters?
It boils down to, effective communication tailored to the situation. You need a really clear tone and register is it formal and polite or casual and friendly. That has to be consistent.
Okay.
You absolutely must address all 3 bullet points given in the prompt. If you miss one, the guide implies you can't get the top score because the task isn't fully complete.
Crucial point.
Organization is also key. Use paragraphs to separate your points clearly. And finally, use language that sounds natural and appropriate for that type of letter. You wouldn't use slang in a formal complaint, obviously.
Does it give examples like opening or closing lines?
Yes, it does. For formal, it suggests openings like, I am writing to express my concern about.
Yeah.
And closings like yours faithfully or yours sincerely, depending on if you know the name.
Standard formal stuff.
And for informal, much more relaxed. Maybe start with, it's been ages since we last talked, or something similar. And close with, take care, see you soon, or best wishes.
So very different feels.
Totally. And it even suggests a little mini exercise. Just practice writing an informal opening line for a holiday invitation from a friend. Good way to focus on getting that initial tone right, apparently.
Okay, let's move on then. Task 2, the essay. This is the one with more words, more time. The main event, really.
Yeah, definitely carries more weight in the scoring, too, typically.
Yeah.
The guide outlines a pretty standard essay structure it recommends. You have your introduction, then your body paragraphs. Usually it's just 2 main ones, but notes you could potentially add a third for, say, a counter argument or another example.
Flexible then.
Somewhat. And finally, a conclusion to wrap it all up. The guide also lists the common types of essays you might get asked to write.
Like what?
Well, there are opinion essays where you have to say if you agree or disagree with a statement. Discussion essays where you might look at advantages and disadvantages or discuss 2 different viewpoints. Then problem solution essays outlining a problem and suggesting ways to fix it. And finally, what it calls double question essays, where the prompt literally asks 2 separate questions you need to answer.
Good to know the different possibilities the guide mentions. Each might need a slightly different angle, even with that standard structure.
So digging into that structure, let's look at the introduction for task 2, aiming for band 9 according to this source. The guide makes it sound quite straightforward, actually. Just 2 main steps.
Okay, what are they?
First, you need to paraphrase the question. Basically, restate the prompt in your own words.
Avoid just copying it.
Exactly. Second step, you need to clearly state your thesis. So if it's an opinion essay, say what your position is. If it's a discussion essay, maybe briefly outline the 2 sides you're going to discuss.
Makes sense. Give the examiner a roadmap right away. Does the guide give an example?
It does. It uses this example question. Some people believe that unpaid community work should be part of high school programs.
Okay, a common sort of topic.
And the Band 9 introduction example the guide provides goes like this. It is often argued that voluntary service should be incorporated into secondary school education. This essay will explain why I strongly support this initiative as it benefits both students and society.
I see. It rephrases unpaid community work as voluntary service and high school programs as secondary school education, and then clearly states, I strongly support this initiative.
Precisely. Clear paraphrase, clear position. The guide also adds a little tip here. Try to avoid really common, slightly cliche opening phrases.
Like what?
Things like nowadays or in today's world. The guide suggests aiming for more direct and precise language right from the start.
Okay, intro covered. What about the body paragraphs in task 2? How does the guide suggest building those effectively?
It recommends a very clear, logical flow within each paragraph, often called the TE structure.
TEE.
Yeah, topic, sentence, explanation example. Yeah. So you start with a clear sentence stating the main idea of that paragraph. That's your topic sentence. Then you explain that idea further. Elaborate on it. Clarify what you mean.
Makes sense.
And finally, you provide a specific example or evidence to support your point. This makes your argument more concrete and convincing, according to the guide.
So, topic sentence, explanation example, TEE. Does it show this in action?
Yes, it gives a Band 9 example paragraph, continuing that volunteering theme, about developing interpersonal skills. It would go something like this, following the structure. One significant advantage of volunteering is the development of interpersonal skills. That's the topic sentence. Then the explanation. When students work in teams or interact with diverse community members, they naturally learn vital skills like empathy, communication, and cooperation, which are crucial for later life.
Expanding on the how.
Right. And then the example, for instance, a student organizing a school fundraising event might need to coordinate with other volunteers, negotiate with suppliers, and speak to potential donors, directly practicing and improving these interactive abilities.
Concrete scenario. That structure does seem logical. Did the guide mention connecting words?
It did. It listed some useful connectors or linking phrases to help create that smooth flow between the sentences and ideas. Things like, for example, or for instance, obviously, for example.
Standard ones.
Yeah, and as a result, for consequences, in contrast, for showing differences, and furthermore, or moreover, to add another related point, using these appropriately is part of cohesion, which is vital for Band 9.
And I think you mentioned another mini exercise here.
Yeah, the guide suggests trying to write just the topic sentence for an essay about whether kids should learn cooking at school. It forces you to practice crystallizing that main idea first.
All right, so after the body paragraphs comes the conclusion for task 2. How does the guide suggest finishing the essay strongly?
It keeps it pretty simple, actually. The formula it gives is basically restate your position, if it's an opinion essay, and then summarize your main points briefly.
So no new information.
Definitely not. The guide is clear on that. It's purely about reinforcing what you've already argued in the body paragraphs.
Okay. Is there an example conclusion for the community service essay?
Yes, following that theme, the Band 9 example conclusion in the guide is, in conclusion, incorporating community service into high school programs not only cultivates essential life skills in students, but also instills a strong sense of social responsibility beneficial to society.
I see. It concisely echoes the main benefits discussed earlier, skills for students, benefit to society.
Exactly. And the guide stresses what not to do in the conclusion. Don't introduce any brand new ideas or arguments, and don't waffle or be overly wordy. Clarity and conciseness are key right to the end, it seems. Now, beyond just the structure, the guide obviously spends time on vocabulary and grammar. These are huge for getting a Band 9.
Makes sense. What are the key takeaways there, according to the source?
For vocabulary, it emphasizes using topic-specific words where possible and being really precise. Don't just use a general word if a more specific one fits better.
Right.
Avoiding repetition is also crucial. The guide suggests using synonyms or rephrasing ideas so you're not using the same key words over and over.
Good to know.
And definitely avoid informal language. The guide gives examples like using children instead of kids, or numerous or significant number of instead of just a lot of. Keep the register academic.
Are there specific academic words it recommends?
It lists a few examples of words that can help elevate the tone, apparently. Words like significantly, substantially, contribute, facilitate, emphasize.
Okay, strong verbs and adverbs.
Yeah, and useful phrases too, like a growing body of evidence suggests, or it is widely believed that. These add a more formal analytical feel, according to the guide.
Got it. And what about grammar for Band 9?
The guide highlights the need to master complex sentences. This doesn't just mean long sentences, but sentences with multiple clauses connected logically. It mentions specifically using things like conditional clauses, if-then structures, maybe more advanced ones too. Using modal verbs, effectively could, should, might, would, and being comfortable with the passive voice where appropriate, like in reports.
So variety and control.
Exactly. Consistency in verb tense is also vital, the guide says. And avoiding basic errors like sentence fragments, incomplete sentences, or run-on sentences, where ideas are just jammed together without proper punctuation or conjunctions.
These seem like fundamentals, but crucial for the highest score. Is there a sentence example?
Yes. The guide provides a really good one to illustrate complex grammar. Had the authorities enforced stricter regulations earlier, environmental damage could have been mitigated.
That's a sophisticated structure. An inverted third conditional shows real grammatical range. Okay, so we have the structure, the language, but you have to do all this under pressure against the clock. Does the guide offer strategy for managing time and planning and checking?
It does. It recommends a specific breakdown of the time for each task. For task 1, the 20-minute one, it suggests about 5 minutes for planning, 12 minutes for writing, and crucially, 3 minutes at the end for checking your work.
5, 12, 3. Okay.
And for task 2, the 40-minute essay, it suggests allocating around 7 minutes for planning, 25 minutes for focused writing, and then a good 8 minutes for proofreading and editing.
7, 25, 8. More checking time for the longer task makes sense. What are the planning tips?
The guide keeps the planning advice pretty simple but practical. Use those initial minutes to quickly brainstorm ideas related to the prompt. Then create a very short outline, maybe just 3 or 4 bullet points to map out your structure and main arguments before you start writing full sentences.
So you know where you're going.
Exactly. And for the proofreading stage at the end, the guide suggests focusing on common error types that are easy to miss but can lose marks.
Like
things like checking for missing articles A and B, which are common slips. Looking for words you've repeated too often and trying to replace them with synonyms. And double-checking your verb tenses for consistency and accuracy. These quick checks, the guide argues, can make a real difference.
right at the end then, to sort of consolidate everything, does the guide offer a final checklist or summary for Band 9?
Yes, it pulls everything together into what it calls a final Band 9 checklist. It's framed as a series of questions you should ask yourself about your writing based on all the criteria discussed.
Useful for self-assessment. What kind of questions are on it?
Things like, did I fully answer all parts of the question? Is the structure clear? Do my ideas progress logically? Is my vocabulary accurate? Is it varied?
Covering all bases.
Yeah, and is my grammar complex? Are there minimal errors? Is the tone right for the task? Is the format correct? Does it all hang together well? Is it coherent and cohesive? Asking these questions, the guide implies, helps you evaluate if you've met the Band 9 standard it described.
And just to round that off, you mentioned the guide suggests specific practice tasks as well.
It does. To put all these principles into action, it recommends 2 specific homework tasks, basically.
Okay.
For task 1, it suggests practicing by describing changes shown in diagrams of a public park over a period of time. Applying those report writing skills, keeping it concise.
Right, focusing on summarizing visual change.
And for task 2, it suggests tackling an essay that asks you to discuss both views on whether history is irrelevant today or still has value, and then to give your own opinion on it. A classic discussion plus opinion essay type.
Good practice for structure and argument development. Okay, so that really covers the ground laid out in this specific source, the IELTS Writing, a Band 9 Masterclass guide. We've walked through how it presents the test format, the structures it recommends for Task 1 reports and letters, its detailed advice on Task 2 essays from intros to conclusions, its focus on high-level vocabulary and grammar, and that practical strategy for timing and proofreading.
Exactly. Every point we've touched on, every tip, every example, it's all drawn directly from what's presented within that guide. It's that source's specific roadmap, its perspective on what it takes to potentially reach Band 9.
Which brings us to a final thought, something maybe to ponder. This guide places a huge emphasis on structure, planning, precise language, supporting points logically. How does that kind of disciplined approach to communication, the kind needed to maybe ace a test, like IELTS, according to this source, translate beyond the exam room? What's the broader value, perhaps, in learning to structure our thoughts and express complex ideas with such clarity, not just for a test, but for understanding and navigating the world around us more effectively?